Hello, David. How are you today?
Hey Matt, I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. You're a little blurry, but I think that's more likely to be the fault of the Zoom than the fault of you.
Well, it's probably the darkness of my room. I think I've got the background on blur. But yeah, as long as you can see me a bit, that's fine. You're the important one.
Oh, don't say that. I couldn't do it without you, or I could, but it would. I've tried doing it without you before, and I get a really sore throat.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Hello, everybody. There's quite a few of you here today, so really glad you all turned up. And I'm sure Matt's got some really good stuff for us.
Here's hoping. Um, so let's introduce ourselves. Hopefully, many of you are returning, but I like to think that I'm the only one who has to be here every week. Um, so, um, by way of introduction, my name is Matt. I look after the research side of things here at Uni Admissions. So my job, and what I've been doing all morning actually, is sitting down with some big old data sets on admissions tests from the last few years and running some little regressions on them, figuring out that the coefficients of correlation, looking at the different weights that different tests have different subjects. Some really interesting stuff that I'm sure will be in an upcoming webinar. But that's not what we're talking about today. Today we're talking about the UCAS form, and I'm joined by my colleague David. David, who are you? Why are you here?
Hello, everybody. Again, my name's David. I am an admissions consultant at Uni Admissions. So if you have a look on the website and you get interested in something and you decide to give us a call, you would speak to somebody like me or me.
And there's no one more like you than yourself.
That's right, yeah.
um, so, as I said, we're going to be talking this week about the UCAS form. This is kind of everything but the personal statement, although we will be touching very briefly on that. And next time in a couple of weeks, we have a special guest. Ooh, special guest. We're being joined by Dr. Alex Hibble, sorry, who is a specialist in the psychology of learning, and who has developed a series of programs and techniques that really make a big difference to memory retention, to exam technique, all sorts of things like that. It's one I'm planning to stick around for, not just as a participant and presenter, but as someone who would like to, improve my memory, things like that. So I'm really looking forward to that one. And I think, yes, I've summarized that on a slide. So that is basically just what I said. So she's going to be joining us in 2 weeks' time. So please do come along for that. I'm sure we'll be sending around more reminders. And even if I'm not presenting, I will be there because it sounds fascinating and would be enormously helpful for me, as despite my age, I haven't got out of doing exams. There are still more exams. Um, don't 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 go and pursue some data science qualifications in your 30s. You've forgotten how to study, and you still have to. Um, so this week we're talking about the personal statement, but before that, not the personal statement, the UCAS form. My God. But first, I'm going to give you some news. I don't know. Can you do a little like news noise, David, for us?
Dun, 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 dun.
The news. Okay, here we go. It's the news. The news is UCAS have somewhere between pushed back and confirmed they are not changing the personal statement this year, and they're probably not changing it next year either. You may have heard that there are plans to change the personal statement from its current kind of essay format into something more like a questionnaire. UCAS have said that they won't be doing that for students this year, and they probably won't be doing it for students next year either. So if you've been worrying about that, you do not need to worry about it. We will get lots of notice, and if I'm being a little, if I'm trying to offer my own insights, I would say there is every chance that the changes will get pushed back, and then perhaps not actually happen. We will see. What has changed, though, is the format of the school reference. This is what we're going to talk about in a second. And I guess that's what we'll come on to now, because those last 2 points are a hangover from a previous slide. Don't know how they got there. New school reference. The thinking behind this from UCAS is that often the way it works in a school is there will be 1 or 2 teachers who deal with a lot of UCAS admin, and it takes up a whole load of time and is massively inconvenient for them. And one of the most inconvenient parts is the school reference. This involves writing a separate reference for each student. The references are quite long, and as time has gone on, students have been putting more pressure on on teachers about the reference, and so UCAS has decided to simplify the whole thing. Other reasons for this: it's much easier for the universities to compare. You're not now having teacher references that have been written in half an hour and others written in 3 days. And it also means that they've got a separate box in the form for talking about COVID, which I think everyone would be including in their personal statement otherwise. So in the new format of the school reference, the first part will just be a summary of what school it is that they go to. So that can be the same for every student who's applying from that school, saying this is this kind of school, it's in this place, these kind of students go here. Information about extenuating circumstances. For most students, this is going to be the situation with lockdowns and the virus. But of course, if there's anything else that's happened to you, then that comes in there. And then at the end, there's some space for supportive information about the applicant, relevant to the course, things that you want to add on. But this makes the whole thing much easier for teachers. It's no longer kind of a personal statement from the teachers as well. It's a much simpler little bit of contextual information for the universities to consume. So quite how this is going to play out, whether this ends up meaning that the school reference counts for less in the application, we don't know for certain yet. But I think, speaking on behalf of my sister-in-law, who's a teacher, I'm sure teachers are relieved by this change, because it's going to be a lot less hassle than the previous regime was, which was apparently a lot of work, often quite late in the day, close to the deadline, which is an awkward situation to be in. So on to our main slides. The UCAS form. First question people ask is, God, this is long. I've been looking at the accessible version, which comes as a paper version, because it's easier to sort of work on these slides using that. And it's something like 35 pages long. It's really long. Loads of the questions are about who you are and where you've been living. This should be easy, because who you are should not have changed, and hopefully you know where you live. But almost everything at the top of the form is almost legal stuff, being like, right, who is this person? Are they a real person? Can we tie them to a passport and a national insurance number for like legal administrative purposes? Can we set them up with student loans? Do we know what kind of fees we need to charge them? All of those things in the first 2 parts, which are called Section 1 and equality monitoring, nothing in those will impact on your application. In most cases, the university won't even see them. That bit will just stay within UCAS as part of UCAS's monitoring process to make sure that everyone who is applying is a real person, and to make sure that all of the diversity stuff that's required under the Equality Act 2010 is being properly dealt with. Nothing in this section is there to influence whether you get in or not, so don't worry too much about it. It's important to do these bits early on, because, as I said, first of all, who you are won't change, hopefully. Or if it does change, hopefully it won't change dramatically. But also because you want to make sure that you've got all the information you need about the fees you're going to be paying. And that's something that you might need to check in with the British Council, with UCAS, with the universities you're applying to, just making sure you understand how you fall within those criteria. I'm sure we're going to get questions on that today, and I'm not going to be able to answer them, because I do not know in anywhere near enough detail how the rules about fees work, and so I don't want to give anyone the wrong information. The information is out there. You can speak to universities, you can speak to UCAS. There is good information on the UK government website, gov.uk. But I genuinely do not know how the fee system works in enough detail to help anyone. And the last thing I would want to do is tell you that you're going to be paying more or paying less than you actually are. So feel free to put questions about that into the chat, but don't be surprised when I don't answer them, because I don't want to be giving people the wrong information about big amounts of money. So on to the real bit of the UCAS form. This is all about explaining who you are from a kind of academic standpoint. All universities care about your life beyond your grades. The interesting part here really is about how well you've performed compared to the context you're in. Imagine that you are the first person in your family to apply to university. You come from a part of the world or a part of the UK that has very poor A-level results on average. Maybe you're the first person in the history of your school to apply to Oxford or Cambridge. In that context, you getting amazing A-level scores is really impressive. And it's more impressive than someone who's going to one of the top sixth forms in the country, a Hills Road, a Peter Symonds, where there might be dozens of students who are applying to Oxbridge and are getting straight A's. That contextual information is really important, and you want to make sure it's in there because the universities want to take it into account. It doesn't mean that if you're coming from a Peter Symonds or a sixth Hills Road, you're necessarily disadvantaged. But it's about making sure that your achievements are put in the proper context. You want to be thinking about this as if you're the admissions tutor on the other side. What are the things you want to know beyond just the grades? What are the things that are more interesting, that tell you more about that person, that give them a little bit more texture? Because there'll be dozens of people with your exact same grades applying. What is it about the way in which you got those grades that you can add to in that part of the form? That brings us to, sorry, I'm operating this on one screen rather than three, which is making it harder for me to keep track of where the slides are going. Speaking of grades, one thing that we're very much aware of, and universities are too, is that the way in which grades have been going in the last couple of years has been a little unusual. During the lockdowns, during the virus, because of the way that teacher-assessed grades worked, students were given the benefit of the doubt a little bit more than they might have done in the context of your traditional exams. That isn't to say anyone who has got an A or an A star where perhaps they wouldn't have done last time didn't deserve it. I have tried doing Zoom school, and it is unbearable. I cannot do it at all. So anyone who will manage to succeed in that context, I'm very impressed by, because I would have totally lost interest by lunchtime on the second day. I would have just disappeared. The school would never have seen me again. I would have been off doing whatever it is that you can do when you're 17 in the UK. I can't go to the pub, but something else naughty. However, the impact of these higher average grades was that for the universities looking at them, it was harder to tell the differences between top performing students. If only 5 or 10% of people are getting an A star, that tells you that anyone who's got an A star is in the top 5 or 10%. But if 40 or 45% of people are getting an A or an A star, that doesn't tell you if they're in the top 5 or 10%. It tells you they're in the top 40%, but that isn't hugely useful when you're trying to choose between people, because 40% is, well, it's not most people, but it's pretty close to being most people. Because of this, kind of the weight that was given to GCSEs and A-level predictions has kind of went down a little bit in the way that we think about how universities assess these things. So that brings us to our pie chart. You ready for a pie chart, David?
Always.
So me and Harry are in the midst of conversations about the pie chart. So this may change between now and the next session, but this is our latest thinking. But an awful lot of Microsoft Excel goes into this. A lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of me doing a lot of maths. So this is kind of what we're looking at the moment, but don't be surprised if it gets a few tweaks around the edges in the next few weeks. But David, go ahead.
Okay, I think I may still have the old numbers, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. So the way that we see it is 10% is your personal statement.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you on that one. Yep.
And then I have exams as total, so I don't know how you split that, but I have 20% for GCSEs and A levels.
Yeah, that looks about the same. I've just broken that out to make it a little bit clearer.
And then and it does look different for you. So I'm going to say 30% for the admissions test, 40% for the interview.
I think that looks pretty good. Maybe a touch higher on the interview, but again, it's, reasonable people can disagree on this one. It's also one where it varies a little bit from subject to subject. So this is kind of an average. If you're applying to an incredibly competitive subject, a PPE or computer science, then the admissions test is more valuable because it's used to eliminate more people before interview. But if you're applying for a subject that's less popular, a modern languages, a classics, and English, then more people get to the interview, and so the interview becomes more important. There's also the obvious problem, which is that you can get an interview and not get in. A lot of people do, but you can't get in without an interview. And so in some sense, the interview just happens afterwards, and it's 100% interview once you've got to the interview. But until you've got to the interview, it's 0% interview. This is a really awkward piece of like how you like to think about conditional probability to do. So it depends whether you're a Bayesian or a frequentist. It's yeah. I've got this horrible feeling now I start saying it that people don't actually want to hear me explain relatively niche issues in probability and data processing.
I'm going to plead the fifth on that one, I think.
Maybe you knew about this already, David. I learned the other day. You pleading the fifth. You demand that you be tried by a grand jury, I believe. I found out what a grand jury is.
Okay.
It's just a big jury.
There you go. It's in the title.
Yeah, it's just more people. I think it's 18 rather than 12, and I was so disappointed. I thought it was going to be something so much more exciting, and they're like, no, it's exactly the same thing, only with more people in it. I don't. I was expecting so much fancier than just big. But there you go. I learned something. Perhaps some of you have. Maybe I was years behind everyone else on this grand jury thing. I guess I don't watch enough legal dramas. So that's the pie chart. Moving on, thinking again about the UCAS statement. We've talked already about the contextual information you'll provide while you're filling in your exam grades. There's space in there for any extracurriculars you've done, things like music exams, drama exams, Duke of Edinburgh, things like that. Your teacher's already filled in what kind of school you go to. They've filled in what problems you might have had during the virus. Now, don't repeat yourself. Don't repeat yourself. You see the joke I'm going for here. If you've already told me in another part of the UCAS statement what A-levels you're doing, the problems you had with COVID, if you're telling me what kind of school you go to, you don't need to tell me again. The way that you would be reading one of these if you're an admissions tutor is you will have in one hand the personal statement, and in the other hand, you will have the contextual information from the other part of the statement. Literally, this is how they give it to you. You get given like 3 pieces of paper stapled together, you tear them apart and you go, da, 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 okay, da, 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 okay, da, 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 okay. And that's how you read it. It doesn't need to be on both pieces of paper. These are smart people. They can look from left to right and read. So if it's already on your UCAS form, please don't mention it again in your personal statement. They already know about the things that are in there. There really is no need for you to bring it back up. Oh, I've had a low battery notification. That's a bit of a worry. A really good personal statement is going to be all about the things that you've done beyond the curriculum, things that are beyond what you did at A-level. So don't focus on things you've been studying at A-level. Show that you are eager to learn, that you're going beyond that information, beyond those questions, and doing more. If it's okay with you, David, I'm going to pause for a second and go and get the charger for my laptop because I'm worried I'm about to run out of battery. Would you vamp for a second with this slide?
I'll give it a go, yeah.
Cheers.
Okay, so just to I suppose reiterate what Matt was saying. The one thing that I would point out from his last point before I try and tackle something that I see on the screen, is that your personal statements, you have so little to write. I think it's 4,000 characters is the way it's described. It may sound like a lot, but it really isn't. And I know from personal experience, when I wrote my personal statement many, many years ago, that I wrote a massive essay. I wrote a huge essay, and I spent 3 or 4 months just trying to get it into the right amount of characters. And so repeating yourself is just another thing that's gonna extend your personal statement and not make it as tight and as short as it needs to be. So yeah, that's a really good piece of advice. Keep the information separate. If you've got it written down already, then concentrate on your personal statement on really getting something new and exciting and extra that can wow the administrators.
Fab. Thanks, David. That was scary. Problem solved. That's never happened before. Do I need a new laptop? I really don't want to buy one. They're expensive. So on to one of the next parts of the form is the options, the places you're applying to. You can pick 5, or if you're applying to study medicine, you can pick 4 and then another non-medicine one. How ambitious are you going to be? If you're applying for Oxford or Cambridge, are you going to go for 4 other really high-end universities? Going to go for a UCL, an LSE, an Exeter, other places? What are you thinking about in terms of an insurance choice? What is your backup? Some people would rather go for a gap year than go to somewhere that they feel is a bit somewhere they're not really excited about. Think about that when you're applying. Even if you think you're going to go for a gap year rather than going somewhere you're not totally happy with, be more ambitious in your choices. You haven't got anything to lose in that context. If all you end up with is an offer from a university you don't really want to go to, and you're not going to go there anyway, don't apply in the first place. It ties into questions about a gap year, things like that. And this is kind of the last point. This is one from personal experience. And it sounds crazy, but don't apply to a university you don't actually want to go to. I wasted a couple of my choices when I applied to uni all those years ago on places I didn't actually want to go. I was like, well, I've picked out the 2 or 3 I'm genuinely interested in. And I guess I'll fill in these other boxes with places that but what was the point in that? I wasn't going to go to them. I didn't want to go to them. All I did was inconvenience some other person who actually did want to go by having an offer. So if you don't want to go somewhere, don't apply to go there. It sounds obvious, but people do the craziest things. I won't say where it was that I applied without actually wanting to go, but I can say I've been there since. And it's perfectly lovely, and I was mistaken as an 18-year-old, but I still don't think I'd have chosen to go there. So we've talked about choices. How do you choose choices? Remember that a lot of degrees are focused on areas that you won't have studied at school. Unless you go to a very fancy school, you probably can't do biochemistry. They probably just do chemistry. Very few schools offer material science. Most schools won't let you do linguistics because they just don't have the people there to study linguistics, or experimental psychology. There probably won't be the facilities for you to do electrical engineering or aerospace engineering, which I know is big near where I live. Very few schools have the technology available for you to do stuff with planes. Planes are really expensive. So really think about what you are interested in outside of the constraints of the A-level or similar syllabus. If you really are interested in something fairly specific, like aerospace engineering, do apply for that. Make sure that you have figured out why you want to do it. You can explain it in your statement, but don't be put off by it being something you've never studied before. Do look around at different universities. They will have different names for degrees that are pretty similar. You'll learn a lot more from looking at what the modules in the first year are than you will from looking at the title. Really get a sense of what you want to do about the subject. Particularly when you get to the interview, this is really helpful to be able to focus on the parts of it that really interest you in a kind of specific way. Don't just get stuck on going, oh, well, I'm applying for English here, and English here. Can I get away with applying for, I don't know, English and French in another place? Don't worry about it. If that's what you're interested in, go for it. Don't get stuck on the titles. Oh, and last of all, if you have really got your heart set on Oxbridge, but it doesn't go well for you, don't forget you can go back. That's what I did after 3 years. Yeah, 4 years after Oxford told me that they weren't interested in me. I got my revenge and went to Cambridge instead. So there, take that, Oxford. There's absolutely nothing wrong with going back for a postgrad. Some of these courses are, the courses are inevitably more detailed, more specific, sometimes more interesting. And so it may be that that's a better time for you to go when you've really got a better sense of the kinds of things you're interested in, kind of as a young academic type. And I think that brings us to the end of my set of slides for today. But David has some slides of his own. Are you ready, David?
Yes, I'm ready.
Cool. I will still be here to help. I'm not going home. Well, I am at home, but I'm not going home yet. So we do a lot more than just PowerPoint presentations. Crazy, I know. Tell everyone what we do, David. What more is there to this organization than me? Because there's a lot more than me.
So thank you, Matt, for that. First of all, that was really good as always. Very informative. I always, I've been doing this for quite a while now, and I always learn something on these Saturday open days. So really good stuff as always. So hello everybody. We are Uni Admissions. We are the world's first Oxbridge prep school. We are a selective prep school, and that's because we have very good success rates. I believe, don't quote me, but I believe it's 61% of our students gained entry into Oxbridge last year. And we're very proud of that. So we do have a consultative process, which is where you would speak to someone like me on the phone. And we have lots of different ways to deliver our programs. And I'm just going to very briefly take you through what one of our premium programs looks like.
All right then, part one.
Here we go. So we have the one-to-one tuition. I'm not going to read what it says on the screen. I'm just going to talk a little bit because I'm sure you can all read. But our one-to-one tuition is with Oxbridge experts. Put simply, you will have a tutor who has been to the same university you want to go to, and they would have studied the same subject that you want to study. So if you want to go to Oxford for engineering, your tutor would have been to Oxford and they would have done engineering. One of the criteria we demand of our tutors is that they've scored in the top 10 percentile for their admissions test. So if they've taken the PAT, the BMAT, whatever it may be, they've scored in the top 10 percentile. So they're nice and smart, long story short for that one. And they also would have helped other students, just like yourselves or your sons, your daughters. They would have helped students just like you to gain entry to the university of your choice for the subject that you're hoping to study. So excellent tutors who would help you with all aspects of the application, the personal statement, your test, and your interview. Okay, so moving on to our comprehensive materials, as you can see there. This is essentially our student portal. would kind of cover everything. As you can see there, it says prep portal. That's our student portal. We have a wealth of resources. We've actually published, I believe the number is 126 books have been published by Union Admissions on all aspects of the application process. And of course, that covers a variety of subjects, but also we have books on the personal statement, we have books on interview techniques. So you would have full access to our library of books. You'd also be given things like suggested reading lists. We have personal statement uploading, where a relevant tutor in the subject will look at your personal statement, critique it and send it back to you. We have past papers. We have a wonderful, what we call revision or test area, where our tutors have created a number of questions in lots of different subjects. And you can actually click on as many subjects as you like, and the computer will randomly generate 15 questions for you to sit in 20 minutes. So really fantastic test prep without just having to redo mock interviews over and over again, which I'm sure you can all appreciate gets extremely boring. So I don't even know if I've covered everything. I know we have academies with lots of videos and written lessons, and there's lots and lots of stuff in our student portal. And as far as I'm concerned, it's unrivaled by absolutely anywhere else. So the materials really are comprehensive. Moving on to the third, what we call the third pillar.
Oh, yep, sorry. Yes, here we are.
So these are our intensive courses. We do these just a little bit before application deadline. And quite often people say to me, why don't you run courses all year? Or how comes you don't do them more often? And the whole point of the way we work, very much like a school, you get your expert tuition, you have your comprehensive materials, you have your seminars, which we'll come on to next. And all of these things enable our students to really reach their peak. Some students are going to reach their peaks at different points of the year. And what the intensive courses do, usually somewhere between 2 to 4 weeks before a deadline, they just really give you that push to get you back up to your peak just before you do your personal statement, your test, or your interview. We do have courses for all three. The interview, for example, course is a 2-day course. You have 4 mock interviews during that course. There's lots of going into smaller groups and study groups and stuff like that. So the courses really are an essential part of the program, and they really help you to hit the right note at the right point of the year. Okay, so I think I have one more pillar. There we go. So these are the weekly enrichment seminars. These are small group sessions replicating the Oxbridge experience. The point of them is to be able to hold discussions around the topics in the same way that you'd be expected to do in your interview. So I always say these are really good interview training. I like to think of, a mock interview as like match practice, and the enrichment seminars are like going to the gym. These are the things that are going to get you really fit. So we run as many of these as we can throughout the year. You are given a handout and some pre-reading for the week's topic. And the seminars themselves are every Sunday at 2 p.m. UK time. They are recorded because we do have students all across the world, and some of them just can't make it, or maybe it's Granny's birthday that week or whatever it may be. So you can always catch up with a seminar during the week if you do happen to miss it. But we always advise that you attend as many as you can, because as I say, they're fantastic interview preparation.
Fab. Thanks. Do we have any more pillars left? Let's find out. Oh, yes.
Oh,
there's one. There's two more.
2 more, yeah. Harry likes to split them up into 6. Yeah, fair enough. So the form groups and the mentoring. So each student would have a form mentor for your subject. So we have 4 mentor groups. So once a month, you would have a form mentor group. And this will be a big group session. And it's a very sort of general group where you'll get updates. Your readings will be checked. You are where you need to be with your readings, your test taking, all of these kind of things. It's an opportunity for students to ask questions as well, again, in a very sort of general sense. But if you do need something a bit more personal, let's say you're thinking about doing some work experience, you're not sure if you should do that EPQ or enter that robotics competition, then you can set up a one-to-one with your form mentor, and they will be able to sit with you, mom, dad, whoever you need, and be able to help you out in a one-to-one session. So you do have both types there, and you can have as many one-to-one sessions as you like throughout the year, which is also very important. So they are mentors, and they are there to help you with all aspects of the application. Your private one-to-one tutor will help you with the academic side. Your form mentor is going to help you with the strategic side. And, you know, if you feel like it's getting on top of you a bit too much and there's too much work, I always advise have a session with your form mentor. They'll be able to help you out, be able to split things up for you, make things seem more doable, and you'll be able to tackle life a bit easier. So they're there to help and to mentor you throughout the year as it goes along. All right, what's
and Harry snuck one last one in.
Personalized portal. Okay, so I've kind of gone over this. So this is again, I think talking about the student portal is what we're going with here with the personalized portal. Our student portal is getting a revamp, an update, whatever you may call it, for 2023. That is going to happen, where are we, in April? So it's going to happen in a month's time. It's going to look amazing. I've seen the pictures, but it's also going to be a little bit more integrated. Students are going to have their own logins, parents will have their own logins, and the tutors will have their own logins as well. You'll all be able to see any information. So when tests are taken, when past papers are taken, all of that information, it is recorded now, but it's going to be, as I say, much more intertwined in the new portal. And basically it just means that, especially with the one-to-one sessions, they really can be adjusted to how the student is, you know, their weak areas, their strong areas. A tutor can go through and really look at a lot of data, gather that information, and then, as I say, adjust their one-to-one sessions accordingly. So yeah, so really looking forward to the new portal. The old portal is great, it is still great, but the new portal is just going to take us into the next era of uni admissions.
Fab. I think that is all the slides that David has as well. That just leaves me to say it does all seem to work. We have success rates that we're incredibly proud of. Only a couple of months ago, we received our 500th offer as an organisation, and we do really well with medicine as well. And so we're really hopeful that you'll be, you know, if you're interested in joining us, you'll be able to further push those numbers in the right direction. Now I'm going to start answering some questions. I would also urge you, if you have questions that are fairly personal to you, that I'm going to really struggle to answer without going and getting a lot of spreadsheets out, please do get in touch with us. You can book a consultation by following the example of the video that hopefully we'll be playing now. And that will give you the chance to speak to David, one of David's colleagues, and really get a sense of what we can do and see how we can start working together.
I could probably take that first one, Matt, if you want me to.
Yeah, go for it.
So May has asked if we offer an interview only session on its own. It's a hard one to answer without speaking to May. Oh, and it's disappeared. Oh, okay, it's been answered. So yeah, it's a hard one to answer without speaking to May. This is why we hold consultations. Every student's different. To be accepted onto one of our programs, we'd need to have a chat with you and decide if we think that, you know, an interview only sort of program is what would work. Generally at this stage of the year, I would advise no. I would say that you're going to need something a little bit more than that. But again, I would need to speak to a student and find out exactly where they're at, why they think they only need interview help, that kind of thing. Because as Matt said earlier, you've got to get to the interview first. And so there's no point in sort of just prepping for the interview if you're never going to get there. So that would be my answer. I hope that kind of answers for you, May. And you know, I suppose my main thing would be give us a call, have a chat with us, and we'll be able to give you a more detailed personal answer.
Thanks, David. I think that's spot on. A lot of people will think they only really need help for the interview, and they'll leave that help until the last minute. But you know, the interview is just part of a package, and it's also important to be doing that prep from early on. The enrichment seminars, things like this, really building up those skills, because trying to just put together the interview in the last few weeks, it just doesn't work.
Especially an Oxbridge interview, which is, you know, I've seen some of the questions that they ask and the sort of answers that you have to give. It's not a skill that you're taught at school. Any school, no matter how good your school is, this is not a skill that you're taught. And so, yeah, like with any skill, practice makes perfect. And if you're going to try and make something perfect and go from 0 to 100 in 2 to 4 weeks, you know, I always say to people, think about not what you're trying to achieve. Yes, you're trying to achieve a good interview. You have to think about the people that you're competing against. And if you're competing against somebody who's been practicing their interview technique all year and you've done it for a month, I know who I put my money on. So.
Absolutely. Emma asks about the personal statement. She asks, should you be writing about the books you're reading, the opinions and your theories? Absolutely. This is exactly the kind of thing you want to be doing in the personal statement. You want to look at what you've been doing in your A-levels and go, okay, that's fine. These are the things I'm doing on top of that, the things where I'm going further. The books I'm reading, the ideas that they're giving me, the book I'm reading after that book that helps me develop that set of ideas, the questions I'm having, really showing your intellectual development. You know, if you are really someone who's going to thrive at a really top university, you're not just going to do the bare minimum of the reading, the bare minimum of the work. You're going to keep doing more, not because you feel like you have to, but because you can't help yourself, because you really want to do it. And so showing that you are, you know, going way beyond the curriculum, that you're interested in other things, that your interest is kind of irrepressible, that's the kind of thing you want to be doing in the personal statement. You know, what you don't want to be doing is saying, well, I read 3 books this year and all 3 of them were for A-level, because that to me says, well, you don't really like reading books, do you? Because those are the only ones you've come up with. This is also particularly helpful to think about in the context of the interview, which is in between you sending the personal statement in and getting the interview, maybe 8-10 weeks later. What are you going to have done extra? How have your ideas going to have evolved since the point of the personal statement? Because something incredibly impressive you can do is you can go in and they'll say, you know, you'll start off with a question or two about your personal statement in the interview, and you can say, actually, I've read this set of ideas. I've developed my thinking from my personal statement. In those 8 or 10 weeks, I've already changed my mind, began developing my ideas, kept working at these things I talked about then, because that's the kind of pace of development I'm on. That if you come and talk to me now, you come and talk to me in 3 months, you'll be able to see progress. That's the kind of thing you really want to be expressing. And so showing the progress you've made beyond A-level in that personal statement is a really, really effective way to put together a good statement. Please do keep questions coming in. We will answer questions until we have either answered most of the questions or until close to 3 o'clock, because then I want to watch some football. So please do keep them coming. Elena asks about cost. What can you tell us about cost, David?
Ooh, okay, so do we partake in all the programs? So the general answer to that would be yes. We do offer what we call a foundation program, but that's generally for very underprivileged. You have to hit a lot of different criteria. And we do have programs that kind of suit all budgets. But again, that's I know I'm repeating myself here, but that's what a consultation's for. The consultation doesn't cost you anything except for a phone call. And so that's the best way to find out about costs, about pricing, about what we think the student will need going forward, to give them the best chance of success for Oxbridge.
Yeah, absolutely, David. Thank you. Emma comes back with another question asking about hobbies such as music grades, which don't relate to the subject. It depends. If you can draw it together into the subject, I think it's really worthwhile. We'll be talking in more detail about personal statements in a few weeks, and there is a video in the archive all about personal statements, and it includes a bit on music in there, so that may be a good one for you to check out, Emma. But as I said, if it's already in the personal statement, if you've already filled out your grade 7 piano, whatever it is earlier on, don't necessarily need to bring it back. But if you're going to bring it into the personal statement, you need to have a really good tie into the subject you're applying for, because there is a risk that you end up listing a bunch of things that you've done that are kind of impressive, but aren't really to do with the subject. You know, if I was applying to study, let's say I'm applying to study chemistry, and my personal statement is full of information about how good I am at playing the piano and how I've been in the school play and how much I enjoy running, and that I'm the captain of the rugby team. Like, all of these things are great, and not very realistic. I'm very cowardly. I would never be in the rugby team. But none of them are to do with chemistry, right? And I can pretend they are. I can come up with some kind of not very convincing sentence where I go, oh, the leadership skills or something like that. But unless you can really tie it to the subject you're applying for, you're just kind of wasting space in the personal statement. They're telling me interesting things about your personality and your interests, but they don't tell me why I should pick you rather than someone else to study chemistry. They might tell me that I should pick you for my rugby team, but this isn't a rugby recruitment exercise. And you would never pick me for a rugby team. You can't tell, but I'm short, slow, and cowardly, which is not what you want in rugby. Not at all. Short and slow I could get away with, but very cowardly. Oh, Irena has an excellent question. Emma, I will, if you go to the website and click where you signed up for the open day, there's a link there through to all of the previous open days. There are, I know that we're pretty close to our 100th open day. Very exciting. Gonna have special fireworks or something for that. So there's a link through there to see all of these. So if you really enjoy my voice, strange choice, but it is all there. Irena asks a really interesting question about modern languages. So Irena spent a couple of years living in France as a child, and is considering doing an A-level in French. So I think the question here is it cheating to do the French A-level if you speak French? I think the answer is probably no. I think that's absolutely fine. After all, the point of the French A-level is to learn French. What I would say, though, is if you are not planning to apply for modern languages, if you're planning to apply for medicine or another science subject, you might be missing out on something by having French as one of your A-levels when it might be more helpful for you to pick up maths or physics there, depending on the subject that you're applying for. Everyone is applying for economics or business. Yeah, I think applying for economics, I think that would probably be fine. I think, you know, if you want to make sure that you're studying maths, there's a secretly large amount of maths in economics. But having a modern language alongside that is absolutely fine. This kind of fits alongside the question about doing a fourth A-level, which we occasionally talk about. And the answer there is, you know, if you're going to do a fourth A-level, I always say there are two circumstances you should do it. One is if it's further maths, and the other is if it is an A-level in your native language that you're not going to have to study for. We had a student a couple of years ago who decided to do A-level Japanese. Now, they were Japanese and they spoke, well, I couldn't tell if they spoke good Japanese or not because I don't know any Japanese. But they did not have to study for the Japanese A-level. They just went in. I think it took them about 20 minutes. If you're in that situation, absolutely do it. But bear in mind, you are kind of doing it for a laugh. If you speak perfect French, you don't need an A-level in French to prove that. It's nice to have. If it's something you enjoy, then go ahead. But if you already have a really solid grasp of the language, if you're kind of doing if you're going to find the exam really easy, then absolutely do it if you want, but don't do it in place of something that might be more valuable to your intellectual development, to your university application. Yeah, I also speak fluent French. I didn't do a French A-level because I could have done, but there were other things I was more interested in doing, and it would have been a bit too easy. And I think we'll take one final question from Emma, and then we'll make a run for it. She asks about the mix of subjects in PPE. That's philosophy, politics, and economics. Should you cover each of them equally? No, I wouldn't worry too much about that. You want to show that you're tying the areas together, which should come fairly naturally. You know, every political question has a philosophical dimension to it, and every question about economics also has a political question as well as a philosophical dimension to it. Tying the different components together in the personal statement is what you want to be doing, rather than saying, this is my philosophy paragraph, this is my economics paragraph, and this is my politics paragraph. I would say find an issue that you're really interested in. Say you're interested in the housing. Where does new housing get built? Talk about the philosophy of whether the philosophical ideas about home ownership, of homelessness, about the question of who should be allowed to live where, about the ideas of kind of dignity and community. Talk about the political challenges of building housing, the political challenges of where housing ends up going, and talk about the economics of it, prices, development, social housing, privately owned housing, renting. For any issue you're interested in, you should be able to tie it all up together. And that's what I would suggest doing, exploring an idea rather than trying to explore each of the subjects. But again, this is an area where it's really helpful to have a chat with us, get a sense of your interests, really get a feel for the kinds of things that we could work with you on, because it is difficult to have a conversation through the slightly odd chat mechanism of Zoom. I think we'll call it a day there, David, because that gives me fully 4 minutes to get down to the pub to watch the football. Know what my priorities are.
Football after yesterday's result, that's I'm out.
Oh yeah, I saw that. That was it was very, I'll tell you what, it was really Spursy, wasn't it? That was the worst thing about it.
Yeah. Yeah. No more football. At least for a week.
Yeah. Well, we've got the Women's World Cup to look forward to.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Even though it is on in the middle of the night because it's in Australia, which I very much disapprove of. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for coming along. It has been a pleasure to see all of your lovely virtual faces, to answer so many questions, to hopefully help people out with some of the information about the UCAS form, because I know it's one of those things that's easy to ignore until the last minute and you're frantically trying to fill it in. And we will see you in 2 weeks to chat with our special guest, Dr. Alex Hibble. We'll be talking to all of us about the smarter way to study, including me, because I could really use some help as I continue to work towards my postgraduate qualification in data science. Have a lovely weekend, everyone. And yeah, I suppose it's goodbye from me. Say goodbye, David.
See you later, everybody. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you.
Right, and see you all in a couple of weeks. Have a lovely weekend. Oh, and Eid Mubarak to those who have finally been allowed to eat at lunchtime again. An even better weekend to you. Bye now.
See ya.